Japan is on track to spend $22.5 billion a year on American weapons by 2027, and it cannot simply stop, even if it wanted to. That number is the price of a structural dependency that took decades to build and would take decades more to unwind. Is Japan buying American weapons because they're the best option, or because the FMS system makes switching to anything else nearly impossible? Three elements sit at the heart of this reality. First, the FMS program itself, a government-to-government sales mechanism where the US sets the price, controls the delivery schedule, and retains authority over maintenance and upgrades. Japan doesn't negotiate with Lockheed Martin directly. It negotiates with the Pentagon, which then contracts Lockheed Martin on Japan's behalf. Second, Japan's own history. Decades of self-imposed arms export bans and a strict 1% of GDP defense caps stunted its domestic defense industry. When Japan finally decided to rearm seriously in 2022, committing 43 trillion yen, roughly $275 billion, over 5 years, its domestic industry couldn't deliver fast enough, so Tokyo turned to Washington. Third, interoperability. Japan doesn't just buy American weapons, it buys into American command and control networks, software ecosystems, and maintenance pipelines. Once you're in, pulling out doesn't just mean buying different jets, it means rebuilding your entire military architecture from scratch. The deeper Japan goes into this buildup, the harder any pivot becomes. Japan doesn't know what it's paying until after it agrees to pay it. That is not an exaggeration, it's how the FMS system works. When Japan submits a letter of offer and acceptance to Washington, the US government provides a price estimate. The final cost can, and regularly does, drift well above that estimate, because the FMS contract absorbs program-wide cost overruns from US military procurement cycles. Japan is effectively a cost-sharing partner in weapons programs it has no design authority over. The currency problem makes this worse. FMS contracts are denominated in US dollars. Japan pays in yen. When the yen depreciates, and between January 2021 and mid-2024, it lost over 50% of its value against the dollar, every active FMS contract gets more expensive in real terms with no renegotiation. Japan's Ministry of Defense confirmed it paid an additional 123.9 billion yen in fiscal year 2023 alone because of yen depreciation on existing FMS contracts. That's roughly $800 million in unbudgeted cost, gone, with no mechanism to recover it. And delivery timelines are set in Washington, not Tokyo. Japan can't accelerate shipment because its threat environment changed. It waits in line behind other FMS customers and behind the Pentagon's own procurement priorities. Japan signed its Tomahawk contract in January 2024, 400 missiles, $2.35 billion, with deliveries scheduled between Japanese fiscal years 2025 and 2027. That schedule exists because it fits US production capacity, not because it fits Japan's operational timeline. None of this stops Japan from signing more contracts. That's the point. The system creates urgency. Regional threats from China and North Korea are real, while simultaneously removing Japan's leverage over cost, timing, and terms. You need the weapons. You take whatever conditions come attached. Drop a comment. Do you think Japan's FMS dependency is a strategic liability or a necessary cost of the alliance? The most expensive part of buying American weapons isn't the purchase price. It's what you have to keep buying forever afterward. Japan is acquiring 147 F-35s, 105 A models, and 42 B models, making it the single largest international customer for the aircraft outside the United States. That commitment alone would be consequential. But the F-35 is not just a jet. It is a node in a networked warfare system. Its mission data, software baselines, threat libraries, and targeting parameters are all managed through a US-controlled program office. Japan can fly its F-35s. It cannot independently update their core software. Every time the threat environment changes, a new Chinese radar signature, a new North Korean missile profile, Japan goes back to Washington for an update. The Aegis situation is structurally identical. Japan operates 8 Aegis-equipped destroyers, with 2 more next-generation Aegis system-equipped vessels under construction at an estimated $2.75 billion per ship. These new vessels carry the AN/SPY-7 radar, a more capable sensor than the previous generation, but the entire combat system still runs through Lockheed Martin as prime integrator, a relationship that has been in place for over 30 years. In December 2025, the U.S. approved a $100.2 million FMS package specifically for Aegis software updates, combat system trials, and engineering support for the existing fleet. The principal contractor, Lockheed Martin. The Aegis weapon system is a software-defined kill chain, meaning the ship's ability to intercept ballistic missiles and engage aircraft is only as current as its last American-approved software update. When Japan wants a new software baseline pushed to its destroyers, it doesn't call its own engineers. It files a request through the FMS system and waits. That wait has real operational consequences. Japan's Aegis destroyers sit at the intersection of air defense, ballistic missile defense, and anti-submarine warfare. They are the backbone of Japan's sea-based deterrent. If a new threat emerges, a new Chinese anti-ship missile variant, a new North Korean ballistic trajectory, Japan's ability to respond depends entirely on how quickly Washington authorizes and delivers the corresponding software patch. This creates what strategists call cascading dependency. Japan buys the F-35, which requires American software. It mounts Aegis on its destroyers, which requires American engineering support. It integrates Tomahawk cruise missiles, range 1,600 kilometers, enough to reach targets on the Chinese mainland, which require American logistics and targeting data infrastructure. Each system is interoperable with U.S. forces by design. Each system is also, by that same design, non-functional without continued American technical engagement. The architecture doesn't just invite dependency, it requires it. The State Department confirms the U.S. has over $20 billion in active government-to-government FMS cases with Japan. Japan sources more than 90% of its defense imports from the United States. Those two numbers describe the architecture of a dependency, not a transactional relationship. The question no one in Tokyo wants to answer publicly is this: if U.S. political will toward the alliance ever wavered, at what point would Japan's military actually stop working? Japan knows the problem. It has been trying to solve it for years, and the results show exactly how hard it is to unwind a dependency this deep. The most ambitious hedge is GCAP, the Global Combat Air Program, a trilateral fighter jet development project with the United Kingdom and Italy, expected to enter service in 2035. Japan's contribution is substantial. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries leads the airframe work, IHI is developing the engine, and Mitsubishi Electric is handling radar. If GCAP delivers on schedule, Japan would for the first time operate a frontline combat aircraft it co-owns intellectually, not one licensed from an American contractor. But 2035 is a long way off. In the meantime, Japan is still buying F-35s. And even GCAP doesn't escape the dependency entirely. Japan will need FMS-sourced weapons to load onto GCAP aircraft, and U.S. intelligence data will remain critical to any targeting mission in the region. The Type 12 surface-to-ship missile is a more immediate example of genuine domestic capability. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries developed it indigenously, and Japan is extending its range from around 100 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers, with air-launched versions entering service in 2027. That's real. It's domestically controlled. Japan owns the production, the intellectual property, and the upgrade path. But the Type 12 complements the Tomahawk, it doesn't replace it. Japan signed for 400 Tomahawks specifically to bridge the gap, while domestic alternatives mature, because the threat environment right now doesn't allow for a 10-year wait. In December 2023, Japan revised its arms export rules to allow Patriot missiles manufactured domestically under U.S. license to be exported back to America. That's a meaningful shift in the relationship. Japan as a supplier, not just a customer, but the Patriot is still an American-designed system under American export control. The arc of Japan's attempted diversification tells you everything. Every domestic alternative takes years to mature. Every interim gap gets filled with another FMS contract, and every FMS contract extends the timeline before Japan can realistically reduce its exposure. Japan is not trapped by bad decisions, it is trapped by the internal logic of the FMS system, combined with a deteriorating security environment that makes waiting strategically unaffordable. The dependency is self-reinforcing in three specific ways going forward. First, the operational integration runs so deep that Japan's ability to fight alongside US forces, the entire premise of the alliance's deterrence value, depends on keeping American systems current. This isn't just about hardware. The F-35's threat libraries, the Aegis software baselines, the Tomahawk's targeting infrastructure, all of it requires continuous American technical engagement to remain combat relevant. Decoupling any one of those systems doesn't just create a capability gap. It creates a hole in Japan's interoperability with the US military at exactly the moment when joint operations would matter most. Degrading that credibility before domestic alternatives could realistically replace it is not a risk any Japanese defense planner can accept. Second, the fiscal trajectory locks in future purchases in ways that compound over time. Japan's FMS spending is rising from $14.8 billion annually in 2023 to a planned $22.5 billion by 2027. But the headline number understates the real commitment. Each new system added, the Aegis system-equipped vessels, the Tomahawks, the additional F-35Bs, generates its own downstream maintenance, software update, and logistics tail. Those tails produce follow-on FMS contracts for years, sometimes decades after the initial purchase. Buying the platform is just the entry fee. Keeping it operational is the recurring subscription. Third, the political window for alternatives is narrower than it looks. GCAP is the most credible long-term hedge Japan has, but it won't produce operational aircraft until 2035 at the earliest, and it depends on sustained trilateral cooperation with the UK and Italy through a geopolitical environment that has proven anything but stable. Japan and Italy are already managing divergent industrial priorities within the program, and any friction there pushes the timeline further right. Domestic missiles like the improved Type 12 represent genuine progress. Japan owns the design, the production, and the upgrade path, but they address only a specific slice of Japan's total force structure. The air defense layer, the ballistic missile defense layer, the fifth-generation air combat layer, all of it remains American for the foreseeable future. What this means practically, Japan is unlikely to reduce FMS dependency before the 2030s, and even then, only at the margins. The alliance benefits are real, the interoperability is real, but so is the leverage Washington holds, quietly, without ever needing to use it, simply because Japan's military cannot function without American technical engagement. If US policy toward the alliance shifted under future political pressure, not broke, just shifted, which system would Japan feel the loss of first? F-35 software updates, Aegis engineering support, or Tomahawk logistics? Tell me your read. If this analysis was useful, subscribe. We dig into this kind of structural defense analysis.